Frankfurt. With Gorazd, we have another set of amazing Ljubljana Talks coming up today. And the first of today is with Nika Brunet-Milunovic from Calm Nest. Now, the reason that we kind of dragged you to Ljubljana Talks is because we want to talk about sensory overwhelmment at IMEX, at different events, and how important it is to understand this in the context of event management. Nika, welcome.
Thank you first for an invitation. And the amount of people here and the density is of course very large. What everybody speaks about here is how much business are they going to sign in today, how many people are they going to meet, what's in the afternoon, is there an evening party, where are we going to eat, what's the program, but nobody's actually talking on the influence what these kind of events have on a personal, just on a very personal level. So what does it do to your sensory overwhelm? What does it do to your mental health? What does it do to your stressor levels? What does it do to your well-being in general? So this is actually what we are trying to do with Calm Nest. We're trying to make events calmer and more inclusive. Oh yeah, and by the way, this is just us here. Every one of 5 people has some kind of sensory processing difficulties, either ADHD, it can be autism, can be many other things. So it's probably in a group of 5, this would be me. But this is just for, let's say, neurotypical person, this is already overwhelming. So you can imagine what this means for somebody that has sensory processing difficulties.
Very good point. But Nika, tell us more about your journey towards the Calm Nest. We need to learn more about you and about your story. And of course, tell us more about Calm Nest itself.
Basically, my story started quite a while ago by graduating in social work at the University of Ljubljana. I transitioned then very quickly, because I was an IT girl all my life, to corporate IT environments, and I've been working there for decent 7 years, so I do have quite a lot of experience with really multinational, multi-corporate companies from all over the world. And 11 years ago, I ended up in events quite by coincidence, and been there ever since, basically, in large-scale music events, club shows, conferences. This is basically my story when it comes to professional path. And in December last year, I actually went full circle and went back to the roots. I founded Calm Nest Collective, which is an Austrian-based, female-founded startup. What we are doing is, as I mentioned, is we're trying to make not just events industry, but just industry in general, a more inclusive and more accessible place for people in general, people working, but also people visiting. We're supplying and designing quiet sensory rooms, which are tailored to every event or office need. Those spaces come in various versions. We have pop-up solutions for events. And we have also permanent solutions for venues, for, hotels. They're just the whole area of industries, basically.
So is it predominantly building the space, or what kind of tools do you use?
We have a simple proposition that the organizer or a company has to provide only the space. We do everything else. So we can just have a flat space, like a flat floor. We can design everything else. We're having various partnerships that can supply either a tent, either some kind of soundproofing structure, various things also based on a company, because we are trying to have the company sustainable. So we have quite various partners from various parts of the world. Let's put it like this. So we try to minimize the transport cost. And then we do basically everything else. So we supply everything that's coming inside, furniture, sensory processing tools. What's worth to mention is that also our spaces are staffed. So we provide at least 2 trained personnel by a space, on a pop-up space in an event. So the space is never empty. When I say empty, of course, we are not sitting inside, but it's always somebody there that can intervene in case of somebody has either a meltdown or whatever. So it's also a very cautious thing.
I think sensory overwhelmment is a thing that we see also coming in on a destination level. For instance, in Ljubljana, we have systematically been working on the amount of the sensory inputs that a person would receive when you get, for instance, into our tourist information center. Because tourist information centers can be very busy, there's a lot of noise, there can be a lot of screens flickering, all this. And we actually are working with some locally based companies that understand the problem of people with such disabilities. So alongside with mobility disabilities, with hearing or visual disabilities, sensory disabilities are very much a topic on the destination level. How do you see this being applied at events?
Well, my personal experience is that events are, it's also based a little bit on a country, I would say. In the UK, this is a little bit better. In Europe, I think we're still lagging a little bit behind. But what you're saying is this is more what's happening on a conscious level. So you're actually designing an experience with having this in mind. While here, what we have is more or less finance-driven business. So the idea is, of course, to put as many people and as many stands in an as small space as possible. So what's happening here on a subconscious level, let's put it like this, there is a lot of interaction. There is a lot of conversations going on, but also on a very, as I said, subconscious level. There are LED lights that are everywhere. There is constant noise that you even don't hear. When you will hear it is if you put really sensory, like some plugs in your ears or something that are soundproof, and then you will understand how much noise you're actually in the whole day. So it's quite normal that you feel completely wiped out by the end of the day. So it's a very, very physically but also mentally demanding business or event, let's put it like this.
We can feel that. Well, the red line of our discussions this year is, of course, why we have so many boring events, which is in line with what you are saying. But what would you comment on that? Boring events in a way that they are not transformative events. They do not transform the behavior of participants, or I don't know, do a revolution, maybe, So.
Yeah, I think that transformation, I think that with events, I think a lot has been done. There is a big chunk of sustainability, because I do still believe that what we're talking about now is still some kind of very part of sustainability of events.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think there is a lot of been done, or a lot of talk is going on the ecological part. So we all know that we have, lights that are or venues that are BREEAM certified, or lights that are consuming less energy. We don't use generators anymore in a volume that we did before. We are taking care of passenger transportation. We are measuring CO2 emissions and stuff like this. But this kind of social part, or let's say just, cultural part of events, I think that there is a big momentum going on in the moment in the world that is maybe missing a little bit in the events. And I think that if we approach events from the perspective that these are actually points of interest of people who are doing a lot, and the reach is enormous. The events are here for people to learn as well. I think that we should use them in a way that they can transform mentality also, if you please. So that's what we should do with events, at least from my point.
Why the sustainability disappeared from this I would say industry? It was a buzzword for the last 10 years, I would say, or 5 years at least, but suddenly, nobody talks about it. Is this about the politics or what? What is happening in the world,
I don't know. This is another. We can have a whole other session about this. The buzzword was. There is quite some bits that were done in sustainability as well. But I would just took the parallel, and since we now know that you have several assessment programs which identify your sustainability efforts, and now we also have on a European level, let's put it, some kind of standards that an event has to meet in order to even organize an event. Well, I would like to do the same with the social aspect of events. So you can't organize an event if you don't do this, that, and whatever.
So in a way, we're talking about DEI, which is now a dirty word almost. But the inclusion bit, you mentioned, focusing on the numbers can be sometimes limiting. But if we would actually say, if we create an environment where more people is more productive, we could quantify that. We could say it is more productive. Wouldn't you say that that could be an angle to tackle this, instead of just saying, we need to be there, full stop?
Well, first of all, I think everything is about numbers, unfortunately. And this is also what the big players in the game understand most. Well, the return on investment on such inclusion bit is huge. First of all, you need to understand, like I've mentioned before, 1 of 5 people is having some kind of sensory processing difficulty. The worst case that can happen is they just don't come to your event. And this is a big amount of number. 20% of people are not going to come to your event. Second of all, for the venues that would install these kind of spaces or have the inclusivity bit in mind, this means positioning themselves on the market as an industry leader, because they are making their venue more inclusive. They are having this in mind. So the well-being of people that come to the venue and their team is being respected. People feel that. Third of all, for the offices, there is, of course, a big benefit, because there is less sick leave. There is better retention of people. So, and of course, I didn't even start on the marketing bit. For the venues also, what this means is they can rent out the space, so they're also generating an additional revenue stream. They can rent out the space together with the venue. They're making additional money with it. So they are really, I can really speak a lot about this, because we've done quite a lot of research how you can do it also from the return on investment perspective.
Yesterday we met in the other hall, right, where there are certain spaces that are quiet spaces, spaces for work, spaces for meetings that allow you to kind of switch off, and you can immediately, hear the difference between the buzz in the main exhibition area where all of these conversations are taking place, and there's a lot of echo and all this, and to the other space which is a lot calmer. I think IMEX is actually doing a great job trying to introduce this sort of practices. Are there things that you've seen at this IMEX that have positively surprised you?
I think that, we've been in contact also prior to the event. I was unfortunately too late with everything, but I think that they're doing a really big job, because let's be honest, this is just one of the events that has this kind of thing at all, because there are many events that don't think about this part at all. So IMEX is doing big strides in this matter already. So this is just my kudos to the organizers. I think also the fact that there are several panels on the IMEX itself, talking about mental health, talking about industry and mental health, talking about struggles that people have, very openly. This is something that has all my support and admiration, because I think that just this predominantly everything is fine, we're all fine, it's just not working anymore, and we need to have this conversation because people are struggling, and this is just a time that we have to just admit that this is just the case. Event industry is a ruthless industry, and it's not going to get better on itself, it's going to get worse. So it is up on us that we are in the industry, and maybe on those that can do some changes, to start really doing them and talk about this openly.
Top, super. Well, you're not out of the event business, but you're still with us. But what would be your dream event to organize? If I would say there is no limitation of anything, how would you structure it? Design it? Yeah.
Well, my dream event would probably get really some decision makers in an event and try to show them what can be done if an event is designed properly from the really bottoms-up perspective, and we do everything from scratch. I think quite a lot of events that are already established are struggling, of course, besides finances, which are a big thing, and sponsorship and stuff, is also that they're always been doing things in a way like since forever, and changes, let's be honest, people hate change. Everybody's in the idea like everybody wants to change, but actually nobody wants to change anything because it's working and it's hard to do anything. But I think that really if every event would be thinking in a way that, okay, let's just do bits and pieces, you don't have to turn your event upside down. Just start somewhere, and it will take you just by nature of events, it's going to change a lot. So yeah, my dream event would really to get a lot of decision makers on board and show them that events can be a different place as well.
Super.
It doesn't matter if it's a festival or a conference or a summit or whatever. I can do everything, but it would be good to do it with the people that can make decisions if necessary or can influence the industry, let's put it like this.
Last but not least, what surprised you in our industry, and what in a positive way, and what in a negative way on a daily basis, I would say. We already touched that a little bit, but maybe as a wrap up of what we are talking about.
The positive bit is definitely that there are a lot of people who are willing to change and are open into this conversation that I've mentioned before. So mental health, the struggles, the stress, combining private life with business life and family life and things like this. Women in the industry, this is a really, I'm really happy about all those positive changes. The negative bit is that things are moving too slow, at least for me. I'm not a very patient person by nature. So I'm more of a revolutionary type. But I do understand that good things take time. And as I said, I think that it's not on events or organizers or hotels or whatever bit of the industry to really turn your place upside down. Just start with small steps and start with the meaningful steps, and you're going to get eventually there where you want to go. So
we usually finish with a couple of short questions. It's a way how to kind of get to know you under the skin in a way. So the first two, you can elaborate, or you can just say the forest or the sea.
The forest, definitely. I'm a nature plants person. I got that from my grandma.
Classical music or rock and roll?
It depends on the occasion. I love classical music as well.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
Nika, thanks for being our guest, for this great insight you provide to us and to our viewers. Stay tuned. We are coming back in a few moments. And once again, thanks, Nika.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the conversation. It's really good. Thank you.
And with Gorazd, we have another fantastic guest. I'm really excited to be finally meeting you, Joe Goldblatt. Welcome to Ljubljana Talks.
It's a great pleasure to be with you gentlemen today. Thank you for inviting me.
The amount of knowledge, the amount of information you have gathered through the work you've done and the publications you've done. What is your view of the meetings industry today?
The meetings industry today is growing from strength to strength. It's really the age of what I call irresistibility. In other words, that meetings and events are everywhere. Why? Because with the rise of technology, there's this greater human desire to do what the three of us are doing, to sit in the same room, face to face, and to share what's in our heart, our mind, our soul. So as technology increases, so does the need to bring us together, almost as though it's a magnetic force pulling us together.
Very nice. Professor, tell us more about your journey, how you started, how you get into our industry, into academia. We would like to know more about your story.
When I was a little boy in my neighborhood, other children were setting up tables with lemonade and selling. But that's a silly way to make money. Why don't I organize a backyard carnival? And so I charged the children in the neighborhood fees to enter. I charged for popcorn, I charged for hot dogs, and then I charged them to have a stand like you have here at IMEX. I made more money than anyone else in the neighborhood, and I had a lot more fun than just selling lemonade. So I always was interested in bringing people together for a common purpose, to do something good. And then a few years later, I wrote at the age of 9 my first book, small little book of memoirs, of stories. And I did that because I thought it's important to organize your thoughts, to remember the past, to forecast the future. And so I think for over 60 years, I've been exploring this phenomenon of bringing people together for a common positive purpose. And then, of course, after starting an events company in my 20s and operating that company for 20 years in Washington, D.C.'s the Watergate office building, where we produced 2 presidential inaugurations, President Bush, President Reagan, as well as the opening of the current president's first casino in Atlantic City, New Jersey. I decided it was time to sell the business, to spend more time with my teenage sons. Unfortunately, the man I sold the business to defaulted. He didn't have the money to pay us the balance. And I thought, oh no, and I had just written the first text of events management that's now been in for 35 years in 8 editions. So I wondered, could this become a curriculum? So are you familiar with the television presenter Oprah Winfrey?
Yes.
Well, I had produced an event for her, and I called her and I said, if I was to create this curriculum, would you please endorse it at universities so that they will take me seriously? She said yes. And I began approaching universities. Most were not interested because they didn't have money to do this, and I did not have a master's or a doctorate. But one university, George Washington University in Washington, D.C., said, if you will come here and create the first academic credential in events management, we will pay for your master's and doctoral degree. So I received a full bursary, and 3 years later, I earned my doctorate, and now I've taught at 4 universities, and I've been retired 6 years.
That is wonderful. It's an amazing career. I mean, the amount of stories that just you opened up right now, there's quite a few questions. But I want to ask you, if we look at your past career, it's fascinating. But what is it that excites you in the meetings industry right now?
There are 3 things that make me jump out of the bed with hope in my heart every morning. First is the growth of technology. Some people, quite frankly, are Luddites. They're afraid of AI, of teleconferencing, and so on. I embrace all of this because it's early days for all this technology. Eventually, it'll become natural and normal in our lives. So technology, the growth of it, the efficiency, the reach that we have. A friend of mine who's in the technology field, I asked her, what's been the biggest change in technology? She said, well, you know, for years I tried to sell teleconferencing, video conferencing. No one was interested. And then we had a pandemic. And suddenly, overnight, everybody has embraced, you know, and I'm just waiting for that next disruption, next technology to the forefront to bring us together. So technology. The second is education and research. We now have hundreds of universities all over the world teaching events management, offering degrees. We have academic journals in this field. So to see how it's growing through research and teaching is really remarkable. And of course, I'm ever hopeful about young people because I believe the young people at IMEX, Ljubljana, throughout the world, are our future in terms of events management. They will find new ways to come together for a common purpose, to bring us together in dialogue, in understanding, and in peace.
What a message. Is it true, Professor, that when we meet, we change the world, as MPI said so many times? That was a slogan of MPI. So when we meet, we change the world. What can you say about it?
Well, the great internationally renowned anthropologist, Dr. Margaret Mead, once said, never, never underestimate the power of a small group of people to change the world. It's the only thing that ever has. And this was after studying indigenous tribes all over the world. So we always come together to celebrate our joys, our triumphs, and even our sorrows. And so I believe that this magnetic force will only get stronger as my generation ages. Because as you age, you're left with memories. And that nostalgia and that sense of wanting to reconnect with your past is another reason we come together. Because then we become storytellers. We share stories about past events that we've attended together. You know, at the end of your life, what is it you really remember? How much money you made? The finest car you drove? You remember moments like the three of us are sharing right now at IMEX.
You so wonderfully quoted Margaret Mead. Now, if we look at our industry through a prism of academic research, the meetings industry usually falls under the cover of tourism. We're usually put into tourism. The faculties of tourism have sub-programs dedicated to the meetings industry and so forth. So if we know that tourism is not a scientific activity on its own, it always needs another scientific background. If we would take psychology and sociology as that kind of a backbone that connects tourism from its starts and saying, you know, meetings industry has started when people started to meet. We could go that it's, you know, very deep within us to meet, like you said before, people will find a way. How about the ethics element in what we do? Where do you see ethics and the importance of ethics?
Well, first of all, beyond psychology, sociology, are other fields. Anthropology, as I mentioned with Dr. Mead, theology, spirituality, right? And let's not forget technology, right? So all of those historic fields, that canon of literature, underpin this that's really quite young. You know, events management is an old craft, but a modern profession. And as far as ethics are concerned, when we created ILEA, the International Live Events Association, One of the first groups, subcommittees that we formed was the committee to create a code of ethics. And when you create a code of ethics, you of course start by looking at pre-existing codes of ethics. So we looked at doctors, lawyers, religious leaders, ministers, to see how we could create a code of ethics that would be even stronger than that.
It's just a sub question. There is another science behind it,
Yes.
and that's the economy.
Yes.
So if we're talking about, usually we measure the success of events through that prism. It's not the prism of ethics or how open it was. It's usually measured by numbers and the business created.
Yes.
Do you see a conflict there?
No. And you mentioned earlier that typically events management is found within the field of tourism. In fact, in most universities, I know this because my book has been adopted all over the world, it's adopted by hospitality. Okay, that's number one. Because of catering, because of hotels where events occur, etc. Tourism is a smaller segment. And then, of course, more widely in the area of business, marketing, okay, because of sponsorship, that kind of thing. And then, of course, you have sports. And he got some phone calls. And he spoke to the young people. And he said to them, what are your expectations in terms of work? Now, this is for waiting in a restaurant. He said the majority of them wanted to work from home. And an even greater number only wanted to work 3 days a week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He asked himself, how do you serve my clients, my guests from home? And how do I run a business that's only open 3 days per week? So there is a greater emphasis upon life-work balance. I think there's a lot more emphasis on life than there is on work. But again, it's early days. These things will eventually find an equilibrium. I never worked a day in my life. First as an event producer, next as a professor, because I enjoyed every moment of my days. Now, did I work hard? You bet. Did I work long? You bet. But it was enjoyable.
It opens a conversation that we had yesterday with actually quite a few people, and that is that our industry, similar to the military, for example, people enjoy it so much, and perhaps it's also not just because of social network and creating of trust and building a social relationship within the business that we do, and we are all willing to go that extra mile, that extra step to deliver that extra quality. It also is quite stressful, and that stress, of course, through adrenaline can become addictive. Now, people sometimes lose their own private identities and identify predominantly only through the work that they do. Now, as you said, you've never worked a day in your life. Do you see perhaps that as a challenge of our industry?
That's an excellent question, because that's the difference between a profession and a vocation. A profession is something someone trains for, is qualified in, etc. But a vocation, Boris, is a calling, right? And when you're called to do things, you have to create boundaries, right? That's why I sold my business, because my sons were becoming teenagers and I didn't want to be traveling 200 days per year. By becoming a professor, I had a more normal, regular schedule, and I could be home with my wife and my children. So it's different for every individual, and it's also different based upon the time of their lives. For young people, traveling is natural and important to them, right? For older people like me, I want to go one place and stay put, you know? So it's all different, but boundaries are important.
Technically, this business started in the caves, actually, around the fireplace, actually, technically. So, did we lost some of the traditions and things we can use nowadays? What we can learn from the past, actually. So, what would you say about it?
Actually, I think just the opposite. We are reinventing this profession with new rituals, new traditions, new history every day. So we're drawing from the past, and then we're finding new ways to interpret it in the modern, context. An example of that would be the way we meet, right? Mm-hmm. We used to meet for multiple days. A convention in the 1950s or 60s was a full week, 6 days, right? You arrived on a Sunday or Monday, you stayed the whole week. Then the jet airplane appeared. Now you don't need to be there for 6 days. You can come for 3 days or 4 days. The average convention now in the United States is no more than 3 days, and some are 2.5 days. So as technology develops and as human needs change, the way we celebrate or meet adapts. But I don't think it diminishes. I think it just finds, as all creatures do through adaptation, a new way of finding meaning in our lives.
I don't know if it is true, but I just read that we spent around 6 years on boring events from the childhood on, Why so and what we can do? This is the red line, we are asking everybody here, how to create not so boring events, in your opinion.
Well, the short answer is you start with the 5 phases of events management that I researched and validated back in the 1990s. First, research. You really ask, do we need this event to begin with? Could IMEX have been conducted online or through a letter or through email? Do we actually need to bring people physically together? Because events are the most high-risk, expensive endeavors in any business enterprise. The second question, or second phase, is design. How can we make this event, if we are going to come together, unique, different, creative, innovative, etc.? So we look at all the history of previous events through research, and we say, how can we take our event to the next level? The third is planning. And then we plan meticulously and precisely every element, knowing that when we go to coordinate the event, when the doors open, the contracts are signed, things are going to change because you're going to be attending and you're going to be attending. And both of you have past lives and you've experienced to this event, your expectation, your way of conducting yourself with other people, and so on. And then finally, we evaluate the event. And again, we must do that systematically, both during the event as well as after the event, to ensure that we can continuously improve the event. So, do events have to be boring? Absolutely not. But you must follow a system of research, design, planning, coordination, and evaluation to promote growth. And I call it, you remember during the pandemic, many event companies were forced to do something called pivot. Remember that term? They had to pivot, to change from face-to-face to online, selling different products, etc. I prefer to call it rising. We ask ourselves with every new event, how can the next event rise even higher?
There are so many questions, so many topics I want to ask you, but because we are on a time schedule, I'm just going to go with one. You've so beautifully described the process of event creation and, through basically the lifeline of an event. But there is a topic that our industry comes back to all the time. We know that meetings are a part of our past. They're an elementary part of our DNA in a way. But there's a struggle, a constant struggle about how to create advocacy of the meetings industry towards the politics, towards the decision makers. Where do you see the solution for this?
I'm so glad you asked that. You're speaking today with the son of a politician. My father was a city councilman. You're speaking today with a man who was a former city councilman. In Washington, D.C., I was a member for 2 years of the Community Council of the City of Washington, D.C. I've always believed that if you don't vote, right, you might just get the kind of government you don't deserve. So first you have to vote. Secondly, you have to support a candidate that reflects your values, and you must get out and campaign for them. But third, where possible, you need to stand for office. We need more people with event leadership experience on city councils, in state legislatures, in federal governments. When I was a council member, and people would come before our council asking for permission to host a festival, I was the only person on that council who had the professional knowledge on their behalf. So that's why I've always encouraged my students to vote to campaign and to stand for office, because it's the way the world more positively for the future of live events.
Amazing. So, Professor, we are coming to the end of our discussion today, but usually we have some fire questions for you to learn more about you. But before we start with that, I have a question. Can you define in 3 words what every great event needs to achieve? Just in 3 words.
A venere, outcomes. Professionalism and legacy.
Very good. And let's start with the fire questions. The first one is virtual or live events. You can comment that, decide for one option or another.
I don't believe in polar opposites. The answer is hybrid. You must make events as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. And therefore, by simply giving 2 polar opposite choices doesn't accomplish that goal. Hybrid is the answer.
I don't know if our viewers can see, but you came in a kilt. So there you go. So the question is, pants or kilt?
May I just say, this morning when I went for breakfast in the hotel, dozens of women asked if they could have their photograph with me. And so the answer is kilts every time.
My last one, beer or wine?
Once again, I'm sorry, but your questions are too extreme. The answer is champagne.
Oh, wow.
Cheers. Or, because of the country that adopted me and my family, for a long conversation and a positive outcome with friends, whiskey every time.
Beautiful, beautiful. Professor Joe Goldblatt, thank you so much for your time and this incredible conversation. It was a pure pleasure. Thank you.
The same with you.
Thanks.
Many thanks to you. Cheers.
Cheers. And stay tuned for more Ljubljana Talks coming up soon.
Well, you asked great questions, fellas. Where will
recorded live at IMEX 2025 here in Frankfurt, Germany. And with Gorazd, we have another great conversation ahead of us with Nicole Oshibodu that we're going to be talking about so many fantastic things, and especially so much about work and ideas about work and how do they work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't love to think of any ideas that I have as work. So it's more of just getting to live life and have a lot of fun and somehow get paid for it.
There you go. So it's actually a conversation we've been having the last couple of days quite a lot, is about this distinction about work, private time. And what we notice similar to the military is people sometimes start to identify themselves with their work to the extent that perhaps it becomes a challenge for them to have a different identity.
Yes.
So when somebody retires, they're struggling. Do you
Absolutely.
see that as a danger?
Yes. Well, I'm glad you actually, I don't know about a danger, but I see an area for opportunity and improvement. I would say that in the military, and I was actually married to somebody in the military, so I actually get that. And it is your identity, and it's also your community. And so I say that, like, it's almost, once you retire, you can still, like, those friendships come with you outside of that forever. But absolutely, yes, it's kind of this little bubble that you live in. And it is hard sometimes to get out of that and say, like, well, what do I do with my time? So I would love to rephrase and say, like, when we're talking about work, or when I'm talking about work anyways, and maybe I'm just lucky, but I've really worked it backwards to do what I feel like is my calling as a human being, and build those friendships and build the community, which is all like about, that's what Club Ichi is all about. And then be able to go and do fun things and do business and make money with those people. So I would love to rephrase the idea of work. I do absolutely understand what you're saying. And I would say that don't lose yourself in the logistics.
You mentioned the word that was mentioned actually in one of our previous conversations with Joe Goldblatt, and he said there's a difference between a work. So how would you differentiate the two?
Yeah, I would say work is something that you have to do because you have to make money, and there's some things that you absolutely check the boxes. You need to be able to do the contracts and that kind of thing. That's work, because I don't consider that very much fun. Okay, a vocation is, how do I want to be in this world? Who do I want to interact with? And then who do I get to go make money with? And in order to make money, you have to do work, which is all the boring stuff. So I would say that the vocation and purpose, and I would say that success in life, honestly, is to be able to have somebody else do the work for you. And those are the boring things. And so we've hired for that. And I don't do the boring things anymore. So I don't work.
Nicole, I eagerly wait for more about you. Tell us more about you, about your story, about Club Ichi.
Yes. Yes.
All what you want to share with our audience.
Absolutely. So Club Ichi is a B2B, a private membership club for B2B event marketers. So those are the ones that are, director level and above, the strategic thinkers, people that control budgets, that make the decisions, and they're really responsible for conversion. So they're not really focused on the logistics of things, but they also get to focus on the big ideas of things, where they're going. Like, how cool is it to sit in a company and be able to help decide direction for things where, yes, it's work too, but just where the company is going, what's trending, and real time and whatever, because that provides for yourself, for your company, and for your employees, something exciting to do, and you're really with the times. But my background formally is I came from the agency world. I've only once, when I was 16, got a job that had a job description. I've talked myself into every single position that I've ever had. And then when I don't like the options on the table, I like to say I don't offer odor off the menu. When I don't like the options on the table, I create my own, absolutely. So when people tell me this is how things work, I literally get a little bit excited inside, because I know I'm not about to do that. And I'm about to do something else that's more fun. And so that's really, and as you go through life like that, you pick people up, right? And you have them in your crew or your club. And that's exactly why we started Club Ichi, was when you get to a certain point in your career, you get bored. And it's not because of you. It's because sometimes, especially the higher you go up, and especially when you work in corporate, who can you go talk to about your challenges and your problems? You surely can't talk to your team, because then they might look at you like, well, maybe they don't know what they're doing. And why are you asking me? Aren't you supposed to tell me what to do? And then you can't, if you're on the corporate event marketer side, you can't put that out on LinkedIn because you'll get attacked with too many options. And I want to say attacked in a bad way, but there are so many options. So who do you go to? There was nothing. And so that's why we created Club Ichi, as a place to go when you truly want that connection, instant introductions. Our Slack channel goes all day long, crazy. So does my cell phone, because that's the kind of relationships that I have. Here's my cell phone number. Call me, text me, anything that you need. And so that's kind of how, I float through life, like a little bit, having fun, doing all of those things. Very much into my role is around partnerships and sponsorships. And really, because I love to be like, let's bring people together and let's do things and let's make a lot of money. Okay, so that's what some people are afraid to talk about. Like, cool, you have a vocation, and cool, you have whatever. If it doesn't make you money, how are you supposed to support the life that you want to have?
Unsustainable at the end.
Yeah, it's unsustainable, right? And to get to go to countries. I mean, Liz and I have been to so many places that are absolutely amazing, and we're just trying to, this year we're focusing a lot on video, content. We're creating the first reality show in the whole industry, which is going to be so amazing. Tune in.
It will be a kind of criminal spies there. Or
okay, we say it's like somebody feed Phil.
On the floor.
Maybe, it might be dead bodies. It's going to be a combo of somebody feed Phil, no reservations from Anthony Bourdain, and a little sprinkle of bridesmaids.
Wow, nice. But why there is so many boring events still?
Yeah, because people are too scared to not do what they've done before. And I will also say sometimes it's not their fault, because sometimes they're in an organization or their job requires them, if this, the executives, and they don't have, power over what they're being told to do. If they're it depends if they're doing return on ego, which is where the executive's well, I want this. Return on ego, ROE, okay? If they're being told, well, I need this, then yes, you have to fulfill some of those executive things. But the way in which you gather, I think, is absolutely broken from the traditional sense. This event is fine, but I don't love it. This is not the way I would do it. And this is not, everybody's so drained at the end of the day. And then you throw parties and alcohol and sugar and so much food and logistics, and it's just crap, right? And so, and I think that traditional events where who wants to sit and listen to somebody else talk at them in a dark room all day? They don't.
Everything you said, I can just say I agree with you, because I see you bring an energy of change and experimentation, and Club Ichi is your child, put it this way, right? So I just want to go one step behind, because now I see your shirt and I notice you are Japanese alphabet.
Yeah.
So Club Ichi, number 1.
Yeah.
What's the meaning behind the 1?
So Club Ichi, Ichi is from a Japanese phrase. They're great at picking that up. As Ichigo Ichi-e, which means one moment, one time, which as event professionals, I get goosebumps. That's what we're all trying to produce, right? And from biz dev to sales to the execution of the event to the destination, what they want to do, the people that live there, what are they trying to bring to the front? It is something that's absolutely unforgettable. And it's something that might be repeatable, but how you experience it in that moment, how your attendees experience is once. And so the idea of bringing that into a club or a community that literally is one, that's what we're all trying to do. So Club Ichi means we are one.
How would you apply that to this, to the IMEX, to the big exhibitions?
Yeah.
How would you change it?
I would say that subgroups. So I would say that the event has to start long before, and that's not in the app. The app is a medium by which you can connect and do the things. So I would have little, almost these little clubs within, right? And so we brought a hosted buyer group here, for example. So we brought 20 people. We have our WhatsApp going all the time. What meeting are you in? Where are you at? What are you doing for dinner? Some things we coordinate and some things we don't. But our little pod of people, we are totally united. I can tell you what's happening on the floor right now with my group of 20, right? And so if we potentially, what if you took somebody 2 people, a destination or a DMC or whatever, and you paired them with the first timer, and you just, maybe those people have 5 first timers, and they're just talking throughout the day. And so it's a little tiny group of 6, because there's no way. That's the thing, is when people try to connect thousands of people together, it doesn't work. Right? It doesn't work. There's an energy here for sure, but there's no way. There's like probably 2,000 people here I won't even meet, and my whole job is to float around the floor and meet and hug everybody. So I would say create little pockets beforehand and say, you're assigned, these are your people. You're going to go through in a more intimate setting with each other, and then we're all going to be a part of the whole as well. And so everybody makes sure that they don't feel lost and alone, because there's thing. And then the email follow-ups come up. Hey, so nice to meet you. And you have 400, like, think through that, right? It's like, that's not a way to connect and interact. So it could be better.
And what to do with those who are introverts, actually? How to touch this point,
Yeah.
How to manage to make networking easier for introverts. Do you have any ideas to share? Or
Yes. So we do something at events, and it's called the Event Wing Women or Event Wingmen. And those are people that purposely, so let's just take a cocktail hour. So the most basic, right? We have some music. We have, we'll say 150 people in a room. You walk in the room, and if you are an introvert, you're like, what do? You stick to the walls, you stick to one person, and then you try and like face each other and create this closed bubble, that because you're uncomfortable and you don't know how to go and bust into the other circles. So one thing that you could do at any event is have actually 3 people. So 3 people per, 1 person per 50, or 3 people for 150. Their job is to make sure, they're called circle busters. Okay, so they would find a circle and be like, hey, you know what? Let's make this U shape just in case somebody else wants to come in. That literally tells you that's the vibe here. You are to let people into the conversation. When they walk up, it's not going to be weird. And those little tiny quick interactions, or you know what I mean? Like I do this to people, and I push them back, and I'll be like, oh my God, you're so great, blah, blah. And they actually move and they open, and that's the kind of thing. And so those people are floating the room. They're also, and those people, they don't have to be extroverts, like a little bees. Yep. And then they're also going around and seeing introverts that are in a conversation. Hey, I don't mean to interrupt your conversation, but if there's anybody, would you like me to introduce you to anybody? Do you want to get into a different circle? Let me know. I can help move you around. And they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. The best about introverts is they have the best conversations. They are some of my best friends. They look for extroverts, really, because they're like, oh my gosh, I want to kind of siphon off their energy. But extroverts look for them to kind of like ground me. Sometimes I'll look at an introvert and be like, are we doing good? Should we move? We should move. Okay, and then I'll move it. And so it's just, if you have designated people to move the room around, they'll be so appreciative, and everybody will have a better time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So tell me, what do you love about our industry? What are positive things and what are negative things which you want to share with our audience?
Absolutely. Okay, so the number one thing that I love is that it's kind of like the military. When you say you're in events, you're like, yeah, like you get it, you connect with them. You have just an understanding of a world that nobody else gets. And that is really the basis of all, communication, and just what makes it really fun is instantly we get 50% into our relationship, where I can literally say, oh my God, I'm so glad you're in events, and I know we just met, but here's what I'm looking for. And you're not going to think that's weird. You're immediately going to be like, true. You know what? I know somebody, and we have instant trust. And so instant trust is one of the great things. I would say that one of the more negative side of things, and this I'm going to go like more introspective, is sometimes it's really easy to lose yourself to the work and to your role. And so I would say both on the, and I hate the word supplier side, but on the supplier side or the brand side or the corporate side, it's really easy to get so busy that you forget that you need to expand your network and be working in it. And this is why it's important, is because right now there is a lot of layoffs. And when the corporate people get laid off, they sometimes find themselves in a position where I don't even have a resume. I don't know anybody right now outside my role. Now what do I do? And so to call on this powerful network that you realize you don't have, then they're spending their time trying to find a job, which we have a lot of members in Club Ichi that are like, oh my gosh, thank God for this community, because now I can find both. I can find job listings, but I also can have connections that I can post in here and say, I'm looking for a job. Here's my role. And even just talking to us, right? Is I'm like, hey, I just saw this role come across, or it was sent to just us. You should apply for it. I'll send a connect message for you. That is the power of community. And I think that kind of goes like positive, negative, positive in the end, right? Liz has this quote that I absolutely love, and somebody just quoted it, one of our members, in a graduation speech on stage, and they said, your network is your net worth. And that is so true. I get goosebumps again, because you always have to be building that. And so never get in a position where you feel like you're good or you're set or you don't need anybody else, because you absolutely don't know when the time will come that you do.
I'm going to steer away from a wonderful topic you opened up, but there is a topic that I want to open up because it's the topic of this conversation, the way we designed it. So we said crazy, awesome events where wild ideas work. What's the wildest idea that works that you would like to share with our audience?
Absolutely. So the way in which we come up with any of our crazy ideas is playing a game called You Know What Would Be Fun? Okay? And that's all I need to say to you. You can go anywhere. You could be in a bathroom stall. You could be at an event. You could be at a gala. You could be at a family event. You could be sitting there on your couch, and you can look around and be like, you know what would be fun? And then somebody around you will be like, what? And that's how you start that discussion. So that's how Liz and I start all of our crazy ideas. A crazy idea that right now that we have that works is the world's first secret business trip. And so, yes, it's called Secret Family Reunion. We did the first one in 2019, and we had 80 experiential marketers show up at JFK, pay for tickets, give us their passport in advance. We told them how to pack for 5 days, what kind of weather, and that's literally all we told them. And they showed up, and we had a giant reveal party moment where we revealed that we had chartered a plane and we were taking them to Tuscany. And in this moment, I was like, everybody's going to fall on the floor, they're going to cry, they're going to do whatever. And when we went 3, 2, 1, Tuscany, and we dropped this sign, there was silence. My heart fell out of my stomach, because I was like, do they not like it? Then I was like, got all like imposter syndrome. And it was because they were thinking in their mind, is there a Tuscany city in the US, which there is? And they're like, oh, Italy, okay, because we had used a script font and you couldn't see it. So, yeah, so this wild and crazy idea is so popular, and it was literally the talk of the industry, that we're bringing it back in May of 26. I think will be for the last time. And that is going to be for 50 people, so 50 event marketers. And all they will be told, we're releasing tickets in a couple, exact same thing.
Are you taking them to Tuscany, US?
No.
That'd be awesome.
Spoiler alert, it's not Tuscany, US, okay?
What gets you out of the bed in the morning to wow the world, to create amazing vows? What is your inspiration too? What can you say about it?
Yes, I would say honestly, what wakes me up in the morning is my brain, is what I dreamt about the night before. So I am the kind of person, I totally have ADHD. I go to bed having dumped my brain with a list of things that I want to do. I don't really have a lot of lists of what I have to do. That's why I have an assistant for, hey, here's what I need to do. Can you do it for me? But what I want to do and who we're talking to essentially at the time. So what my conversations are, especially because I have big partnership conversations. I start at the top. What if you did this giant thing for this much money? I quickly say what I want to happen and how much it is. If they don't stop the conversation there, now it's so exciting, So I love to have conversations that add an extra zero. So that's like really what I get up in the morning is, what can I nail today by 5 o'clock? I try and end at 5 so I can have, my family loves when I'm present and don't talk about what I do. And so that's literally, I'm just like, what can I push over the mountain by 5 o'clock that would take somebody else 6 months? Just because it's a fun competition for me.
Oof, what a story, actually. We are coming to the end of the Ljubljana talk. And usually we ask you some questions.
Sure.
Which we call fire questions.
Do it.
But first of all, let's wrap up the whole story of yours in 3 words.
In 3 words?
Yeah.
Magnetic, goosebumps, glitter cannon.
Wow. My classical fire question is virtual or live events, in line with what we talked before. You can explain, decide for one option or another.
Do you mean what are live events?
No, virtual or live events?
Oh, live events every time.
A welcome reception or a gala dinner?
Welcome reception.
Day or night?
Night.
Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
thank
coming
you.
to Ljubljana Talks. Nicole, it was a pure pleasure. Thank you for all this wonderful energy that will probably just take us throughout the day.
Close.
It's amazing.
Take it.
There you go. And thank you, all of our viewers, and see you soon. Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.
Yay, that was awesome. Yes, that was so good.
IBTM.
IMEX.
Shit. And with Gorazd, we have another great conversation ahead of us with Rob Hosking. Rob, you are an ex-police officer, and nowadays you help teams to be better based on your experience as a police officer.
Yeah.
How would you describe what you are doing at IMEX? What is the message that you're trying to get across?
Yeah, so I'm a former frontline police officer turned motivational TEDx speaker, and at IMEX I'm here to give many talks about different topics such as resilience, adaptability, and also mental health. Three big things that people in the event industry will be suffering from in many different ways. They need have better resilience. They are voted one of the most stressful industries to work in. So they need to have a better relationship with how they can handle stress and also their mental health. So it's all comes in together, and all three of these things kind of work together. So still, it's today and yesterday all about getting that message out there and help people.
I usually start with the question, tell us more about yourself, about your journey from police to where you are now.
Yeah.
Can you go from the beginning till now?
Yeah, my journey started at 22 years old when I joined the police service. So I was quite young to join such a high pressurized, highly stressful job. And I was a police officer for 5 years. And for those years, my mental health really suffered. There's many ups and downs. And I put that down to mainly the stress. Not because I couldn't handle stress. It was because the stress was chronic and it was excessive to the point where there was no coping mechanisms for us. And the coping mechanisms that there was, we didn't use because there was a stigma. There was a stigma in this organization about admitting that you were stressed out. And when you don't admit that you're stressed out, you then don't get the support. You don't get the help that you need. So that's why the stress impacted me, rather than because it was just a stressful job. It's because the lack of support and the lack of psychological safety. So I talk a lot about psychological safety now, and it's so important in workplaces and even in our personal lives to create this psychological safe culture where people feel safe to say, I made a mistake, where people feel safe to say, I need support. So my journey was kind of hitting rock bottom, getting back up again, and then a last ever shift, which just kind of changed my life. So my last ever shift, I witnessed a 21-year-old male take his own life. And then 5 hours later, my colleague died of a heart attack in front of me. So it was a shift of all shifts, so to speak. But it taught me a lot about myself and taught me a lot about what I needed to do. So I followed this passion of motivational speaking, and here I am today.
Amazing. Is there a difference? You came from a man's world, to a kind of woman's world, here. Is there a difference, in your opinion, between attitude towards what we talked before between men and women?
Yeah, I think definitely in that male-dominated industry, not even necessarily male-dominated, but it was a very macho culture in the police where you did not admit that you needed help. You did not admit that the trauma that you dealt with was impacting you. And here, obviously, the similarities is that it's still a stressful job. I think in general, women are better opening up in general. But even in a high pressurized environment like the event industry, they feel like they don't have time to take time for themselves. They've got stuff to do. They got the next thing. So there's many similarities with that in the police, whether you're male or female, where you feel like you're there for other people. You feel like you've got a job to do. If you don't do your job, you're not making money. If you don't do your job in the police, people are losing their lives, so to speak. So the pressure, 100%, the pressure is very similar. And I think we deal with it differently, but also similar in many ways.
With Gorazd, we've been doing this podcast for 5 years now. And I think there's a topic that kind of floats around with different conversations that we have that kind of comes out. So in the past, there's been sustainability and AI and, this year, I think mental health is extremely kind of the topic that we keep getting back to, this personal wellness, the well-being of, the work-life balance. And you mentioned something before, and it kind of resonated. Recognition of stress, or recognition that you need help. How would you say you have to deal with that?
Yeah, recognition is probably the most hardest thing that you do, but it's the most rewarding thing that you'll do too. It's hard to recognize it on other people, never mind in yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But within yourselves, you need to know that we all have a different stress threshold, and your stress threshold will be different to yours, and it'll be different to mine, and that's okay. If I tried to keep up with yours, or you tried to keep up with mine, and vice versa, this is when we get into that problem, because we're seeing other people and say, oh, they're handling this, so I'll handle it too. Recognition of maybe your stress threshold isn't as high as other people's. Being compassionate to yourself to be understand, well, what do I need? Because yes, I might not be able to handle that stressor, but I might just have to look after myself a little bit better to then handle it better. So it's about recognition, recognizing what you need to do. And for me, it's always look at these symptoms. The physical symptoms can be so powerful. The tiredness, the insomnia with your eyes, the complexion,
on the way there.
You're on the way there. I feel it this morning too.
Yeah.
But these kind of things where you're maybe withdrawn a little bit, changes in behavior, it may be the most subtle changes, but those things where you think, oh, I maybe don't have the energy that I did to do that thing. I don't feel like I want to, or I don't have that drive. They can all be signs where you think maybe your threshold has been breached. Maybe you have to just check in with yourself, and it's okay to take a step back. Because if you take a step back, you can take 2 steps forward.
I'm thinking now, police is completely hierarchical, there is no doubt, there is a line of commands, but then we have on the other side this open, I would say, way of management, a lean organization and so on. Can you say something about it? Is maybe because of this hierarchy, the stress so hard too, I don't know. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, people say it's a top-down approach with leadership, and if a leader doesn't admit when they're stressed, if a leader doesn't show any form of weakness, then it gets passed down. And this is why I talk a lot about psychological safety, because no matter what leader you are in an organization, you need to feel that it's safe to say, I've made a mistake. And as a leader, if you say you've made a mistake, imagine how powerful that is to your staff to feel like, wait a minute, maybe it's okay to admit that I've made a mistake. So leaders, whether it's in the hierarchical system or not, they have such a role to play in creating a safe culture where people actually feel safe to say, I need time for myself. When we don't have that, and in the police, they were so bad for that. In the police, they did not want to admit, the higher-ups did not want to admit that they were struggling. So therefore, it was created a culture where you just got on with it. You moved on, you got on with it. But so many other organizations that I see, they're so much better at it. You see the chief in command actually saying, we made a mistake, and this is what we had to look after myself. That's such a powerful thing, such an easy, but such a powerful thing, because vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And you have a leader in an organization willing to be vulnerable, maybe you're able to, and that's so important.
When talking about, basically systemic solutions of stress and stress recognition and trend early, because we had a conversation before that there is examples where people say that is a normal thing.
Yeah.
That it's a part of the game, it's normal. Said we have levels and we have different, possibly different one to another. What would you say should be systemic solutions within an organization, and how to recognize and how to deal with that stress?
So I always put it into the responsibility of the individual too, because you said there about work-life balance earlier. And I actually disagree with that phrase because we hear it all the time. And when we actually think about it, is there such a thing? Is there such a thing as work-life balance? Because when you're stressed at work, you bring some of it home with you. Of course you do. You may not bring it all, but you bring some of it home. And when you're stressed in your home life, guess what? You bring some of it to your work life. So I always say it's life balance. It's about life, because work life, it is our life. So I always say to people, take the responsibility of understanding what can you do for yourself, even at work. Taking a break, taking a lunch break. How many people don't take a lunch break because they're like, I'm too busy to take a lunch break. I need to do this. Make time for yourself during the day, whether that's listening to a podcast on the way to work, going for a walk on your lunch, or at the end of your day, meeting a friend for a walk, whatever it may be. We can always do something for ourselves. So I tell everybody, check in with yourself each day. Ask yourself, what have I done for me? Not your organization, not your colleagues, not your friends, not your family. What have I done for me today and my happiness? That is such a powerful shift. Because see, when we get into get used to doing this and saying, I've actually done this for my happiness, our stress levels lower. We become more resilient because we're doing the right habits. The daily habits, not the habits we do on the weekends, not the habits we do on our days off. It's the daily habits that matter. It's the daily habits that will increase your resilience and will help you actually bounce back better when stress hits. So I always put the responsibility on other people. Yes, an organization can make sure that they're giving people that time off. Like your lunch break, this is your lunch break. Take your lunch break. And leaders need to be seen to be doing that too. If you see a leader working throughout their lunch all the time, guess what? That kind of culture creates people thinking, I need to work throughout my lunch. So, but the responsibility is on us too.
Very good. Resilience sounds as a hard word, at least to me, how you feel about, how does it feel to you, this resilience concept and so on, Tell us more about that. Because, not everybody understands what is resilience.
I always thought resilience was about bouncing back. We bounce back from difficulty. We go again. And as a police officer, I had to do that every single day. Every single shift, I had to do that. But after that last shift, when I watched my colleague die in front of me, I realized that resilience isn't about bouncing back. It's about bouncing back well. See, there's a significant difference there. Because when I was just bouncing back, I wasn't dealing with my traumas. I wasn't dealing with my stressors. I wasn't processing my emotions. I was just going again, and it was leading to burnout. So I was just bouncing back. Bouncing back will just lead to burnout. But resilience is about bouncing back well. It's about doing these small habits day in and day out, doing the things that you need to become more resilient regularly. And that way you can bounce back well. So I believe there's 4 sides to resilience. It's not just you're resilient or not. I think we can train resilience. I think the first one's about mindset. And mindset is a very broad thing, but it's about how do we view our setbacks? How do we view failure? And many of us will view setbacks as a reason to stop. It will be a reason just to be like, I'm down, I feel down about this. But if we change our mindset and think, well, what is this teaching us? Write down, what has this taught me? This mistake, this failure. All of a sudden, you're reframing setbacks. And setbacks actually become a way to improve. And if we can do that, when a setbacks happen, we're already turning that into a positive, which is so important for resilience. The second one is connections. We need to connect with people, whether it's your colleagues, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, because we can become more resilient in the process of connecting with one another in our most challenging of times. This is why, something like IMEX is so good, because you're socializing, you're connecting with like-minded people in the industry. Use those connections, the people who understand what it is to be an event professional. Connect with them, use your connections, because you can actually become more resilient by using them. The next one, self-belief. I think we have to understand our strengths. And yes, imposter syndrome will come in, but understand, what are you good at? What am I good at? What's my strength? And I'll ask you this question, what is your strength? It may not be your biggest strength, but think about your strengths and tell me them, because it's important that we get used to telling people, what am I good at? Because we don't like to do that in society, do we? We think, oh, that'll be arrogant of me to say what I'm good at.
So Jan,
So
let's start.
what is it? What's your strength?
I would say creativity.
Creativity?
Okay, Jan?
I would say finding solutions in stressful situations.
Good. Okay. That's good. And see, whenever you will have doubts. I'm sure sometimes you will think to yourself, am I that good at that? But just remember, you've just said it to me, I'm a stranger to you today.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a new connection to you. If you can tell me that, you can remind yourself of that every single day. When the going gets tough, remember this.
It's therapy now.
This is
It's a therapy. We're doing therapy, everybody.
That's
So
it.
it's
Yeah.
Ljubljana Talks therapy. Now, talking about therapy, when you realize that you've hit a breaking point, how did you go to therapy? How did you resolve those issues that were inside, untreated? How did you treat them?
I did go to therapy. I went to different kind of therapies. I went to a silent counseling session. I went to talking therapies. Some worked better than others, if I'm honest with you. I didn't love the talking therapies, but it was maybe because I didn't connect with the person. The silent counseling session was good because I wasn't ready to speak about my experiences, so it was very good for me. But yeah, it's about understanding what works for you, and that will be a trial and error kind of thing. For me, I was from this military family, so it was very difficult for me to ever open up to anybody, never mind my family. But once I broke down that barrier and was able to open up to the close people in my life, it completely changed my life.
Would you connect, you mentioned your family, would you connect this to a broader context of your origin, the society around you?
Yep.
Do you think that's a societal thing, or so depending on the culture?
Yeah.
Or do you think it's a general thing?
This macho, the not wanting to open up to your family, I mean, I think it's a society thing. Families will obviously have different kind of aspects to do with it, but society has dictated, especially men, we do not open up about how we feel. We hide our emotions. And that's been a generational thing for many, many years now. So it's very difficult just to change it overnight. Very, very difficult. I think it's work in progress, but you know, your family can help you. Some people don't have those families. I said I didn't have that family where I felt safe to do that because we just did not share our emotions. We just did not do that. I think society can do a lot more, and that's why it's so good, even just right here in this podcast, speaking openly about these things for people to think, maybe I can do that too then. Maybe I can share openly.
You said you live in Valencia now,
Sí,
right?
sí.
So do you see a difference in Valencia, for example?
Yeah, I think so. But yet again, it's probably who you surround yourself with. I think the expat community in Valencia, I can only speak for rather than the Valencian community. But the expat community are a lot more probably self-aware about personal development, what they need to do in their life. So you're surrounded by people who understand the importance of speaking about their feelings, speaking about their stressors. And yeah, I say I can't speak for the Valencian community, but the expat community in Valencia, they're very good for it. So different cultures will have different feelings, but the UK definitely could be better. And I think probably from what I know about Germany, I think probably could be a lot better too, because I think that macho-ness probably exists here of what it means to be a man. But we need to challenge those. We need to change, and life's all about challenging the status quo. Even the event industry, challenge, be the change. Don't just let the change happen. Why don't we be the change?
But you need to have a good coach, am I right?
Yes. Yeah.
If I understand you
Yep.
correctly. What if the coach is obsessed with FOMO and obsessed with details and
Yep.
checking everything what is happening?
Yeah.
How to change this coach, which is obviously creating the stress and
Yeah. Well,
a lot of
I always say
negative things.
micromanagement will kill creativity. Micromanagement will kill people's stress, you know, in a bad way. Micromanagement is not the answer. I always say to people, if we give people power, if we give people autonomy to make decisions, yes, they may make mistakes. Yes, they will. But the one thing that people need to build their resilience is to problem solve. That's one thing that people need to build resilience. And if you are micromanaging people, that person's not problem solving. So if you want to build a more resilient organization, a more resilient individual, give them responsibilities, give them autonomy. And yes, they will make mistakes. but they will learn from things. They will learn on their way.
Jure usually stands on that position when we are approaching the deadline. Now, he's been standing there for a while because this is a fascinating conversation, and I think it opens up so many things from in industry perspective, from society perspective, from personal perspective, all the things that we've touched upon. So we will have to finish up, and we usually finish up with 5 questions. So you can answer shortly, or you can tell more about your answer. So the first one I have is the sea or the mountains?
The sea. Love the sea.
Driving on left or right?
Driving on the right.
Okay, cool.
Well, I don't know what country that is. I forget. What's driving on the right? That's Spain. It's España. Yeah. I've adapted.
Cool. Beer or wine?
I don't drink alcohol.
Okay, cool.
Thank you so much, Rob,
Thank you
for
so
your
much.
time and coming here and having this fascinating conversation, which I think is so relevant. So
Appreciate it.
stay tuned, and we'll be back with more Ljubljana Talks.
Cool, very good.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Brilliant.
Really good.